Hey guys, welcome to today's lesson on the five kingdoms and classification. So I'm going to present this as a screencast. My cat's going to come in here and mess things up. So we're looking at the five kingdoms and going to continue our talk on classification. So if we remember from, let's move me over here this time. If we remember earlier, we were talking about classifying things, and we're really concerned this unit about scientific classification. So classifying things means grouping them into things that were similar, and we looked at modes of transportation based on things that they have in common. So scientists do the same thing, but they use these groups and they base it on characteristics. So the things that they have in common are called characteristics, and they organize all of the organisms or living things. We talked about that. So organisms means living things on Earth. So here are the five kingdoms. Get myself out of there for you. So the five kingdoms. The Monera kingdom, and this is all the bacteria that belong in the world. The Protist kingdom, okay, mostly single-celled organisms and some algae. Okay, organisms single-celled. We're talking about things that have nucleus and some. If it's just a single cell, they're working at feeding themselves and can survive all on their own. Everything else is multicellular, like us. We've got billions and billions of cells. So Monera don't have a nucleus. The first one, Protists actually let me give you an example. Just thinking of it. Diatoms and what's one that you might know? I can't think of it right now, but it'll come back to me probably in like 2 slides later. I'll refer back to it. But anyhow, the plant kingdom, obviously you know what plants are. Animal kingdoms, you know what they are. So the plant kingdoms, trees, grasses, flowers, animals, anything with a backbone. Okay, and also animals without backbones. You can see how that would split off into another group, right, as we go further into it. And then the fungi kingdom as well. So fungi, singular is fungus, and that's going to be all your mushrooms. Okay, so there's the five kingdoms. So a few vocabulary things you need to know. Kingdoms, the categories of the natural world. Chlorophyll, this is the green substance inside the plants that uses light to change carbon dioxide and water into carbohydrates. So that allows plants to make their own food, basically. They take all the bad stuff in the world, use the light energy and carbon dioxide and change it into food. And so we as animals, because humans are animals, we eat that food. We can't make our own. We have to eat something else. So we cannot make our own. We don't have chlorophyll in us. And chlorophyll is like green. That's why plants are green, okay? And that's called an organelle. And organelles are specialized parts of cells. So you'll get more into cells in grade 8. But for now, all you need to know is that chlorophyll is green and plants have them, and that's how they make their food. Classification, we talked about this last presentation as well. The process by which scientists group living organisms. So there is your key vocabulary for today's lesson. And let's get into the meat of it. So how does scientific classification work? Not just putting things into groups. How does it work scientifically? So scientists they have jobs that they spend their entire careers doing this, discovering new things. And we talked about all the new life on there. They think there's over 15 million different types, and they've only discovered, I think it was 2.7 or 2.8 million so far. So there's a lot still out there that they don't even know what it is. So when they find something, they have to decide what characteristics they have and where it slots into the five kingdoms. So scientists divide all living things into groups called kingdoms. Then all the kingdoms are divided into smaller groups, and then again into smaller groups, and then so on and so on and so on. So here's an example. So it goes from kingdoms into the biggest 5 groups that contain all the living things. We talked about those 5 kingdoms, and then they get split up into smaller things called phyla, then into classes, then into smaller things, orders, less and less, and then those orders into families, the families divided into genera, and then lastly into specific species. So a little question for you to think while you're going through this. I'm going to give you an example, and you should tell me, hopefully, which one it's going to be. So which organism am I? So it falls under the Animalia kingdom, so animal. It's under the Chordata phyla, the Mammalia class. So if you know anything, it's going to be a mammal. It's Carnivora, so it's going to be a carnivore. And it's part of the Canidae families, not to be confused with the country Canada. The genera is Canis, and the species is Lupus. So the Canis lupus. You might already know it, and you're screaming on your screen. And if not, take a wild guess. It's a wolf. Okay, so that's, instead of just wolf, it's ball. That's the trajectory and how we've classified it, and that's its scientific classification. So we're just going to take a closer look at the plant, animal, and fungi kingdoms. We're going to avoid the protist and Monera kingdom for right now, and we're going to look at the characteristics, so the things that they have in common together. So number one, the plants. They make their own food. We talked about that using photosynthesis, and more specifically, the organelle chlorophyll. Plants don't move around. They root and they stay. So how they make their food and their movement. Those are the ways that we're classifying them, the characteristics. Animals get their own food from eating other organisms, and they move around. So you can see how they're completely different from plants. And fungi obtain food from other organisms. So similar to animals, they have to get their own food. They can't make it, but they don't move around. So they share some common things. Okay. All right, so your turn. What you're going to do is you're going to choose 3 living things, 3 organisms, one from the animal kingdom, one from the plant kingdom, and one from the fungus kingdom. So you can research it, use the internet, it's at your disposal, or you've got something in mind already. Ryan says he wants his mummy, but hopefully it's not too loud for you. Your job. Research and document the scientific classification of your 3 chosen organisms. So I did one, I did the wolf. Okay, you're going to do the same thing, and you're going to use the internet to do that. So you can just Google it, make sure it's reputable. You're using your research skills, and find 3. One from the animal kingdom, one from the plant kingdom, and one from the fungus kingdom. Then what I'd like you to do is find a picture to go alongside it. So I found one of the wolf right beside it. So you should have 3 pictures and the 3 scientific classifications. Post them side by side, whether it's in a Google Doc or a Google Slide, doesn't matter. Do that. And when you're choosing your pictures, make sure you're using sites like unsplash.com or creativecommons.org to source your pictures and avoid copyright infringement, and to keep on working on your web literacy skills. Okay, so if you got another site that you'd rather use, okay, Willow likes unsplash.com, right, Will? But whatever you choose is completely fine with me, and good luck. Share it with me when you're done. And we are done today's lesson. Good stuff, grade 6. Have a good one.